Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast, a space for spiritual entrepreneurs who refuse to settle for anything less than their purpose. I am your host, Lauren Perlingi. After surviving a near-death experience and being declared gone for 3 minutes, I woke up with a mission to help women turn self-sabotage into self-compassion and fear into fuel. Here, we're going to dive into raw conversations, practical tools, and inspiring stories designed to help you break free from old patterns, claim your voice, and build a business that lights up your soul. If you've ever felt like you don't fit the mold, you're in the right place. This is where Misfits rise into their power. Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I am your host, Lauren Perlingi, an intuitive human design business guide, trauma-informed healer, and the creator of the 90-second method, where we create how to regulate in real time so we can actually make aligned decisions in life, business, and relationships. So today's episode is one of the conversations that bridges science, the body, and something much deeper: consciousness, breath, trauma, and what really is meant to come back into alignment with who you truly are. So this conversation is not just something that you're going to listen to, it's something that you're going to actually feel. And I'm really excited for you guys to meet today's guest. So with that, Colleen, I would love for you to introduce yourself in your own words and give a little bit about who you are, your work, and what led you here.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Sure.
I am trained as a psychologist, and later in life, I was trained as a breath worker because I saw the value of what breath work did for me to start this conversation with my own soul. In my private practice, I've used primarily internal family systems and somatic experiencing to really get at those stuck trauma energies that we carry around. And I am a mystic. I've always been an intuitive, primarily with the people I love the most. I think for me, that's the portal to that higher connection. And because life has shaped me, knocked on the door of my heart, it never gives up on any of us, giving me exactly what I need. I've had 2 near-death experiences, and there was so much growth in my relationship to what this divine energy actually is in each of those experiences. And so really my life has become one of a divine conversation. Everything is a devotion to this love energy and becoming more and more rarefied love, what that actually is. It's very complex. We have lots of platitudes, but living it is a complex relationship. And so Spirit asked me to put down my experiences in a book to inspire others, which is what I did. My book is called Essence Merging. That has deep meaning. And so all that to say that what I really am is what we all really are, which is an energy being having a human experience.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much that I want to say and talk about, but first, I actually just publicly started talking about my near-death experiences. So I do know that a lot of the listeners are like, Lauren, when are you going to do your own solo episode and talk about it? And I'm like, well, you can go listen to this podcast until I figure out how I'm going to, because I'm not really one to just kind of talk. I'm like, talk on, on camera and just like talk at this, myself, I guess. So I'm like, I like to have it in conversation, but I would love to first thank you for being so brave and vulnerable and coming and sharing your wisdom. We'll also get in a little bit later into your book and kind of dive a little bit into that journey. But if you're open, would you talk a little bit about your near-death experience and how and what have you learned from having that near-death experience?
Sure, I'd love to. So there were 2. That's a lot for one life, but I'm going to start the story by saying when I was 27 years old, my younger brother was 12. He was like a second son to me. Our mother was bipolar, and he's the only person that called me every single day. We were very, very close. And he died in a car accident. So one day I talked to him, and the next day I didn't. That's perhaps the hardest grief. And when you're 15 and you've got so much promise. And so a part of me died when he died. And that was its own journey with lots of lessons. But fast forward 25 years later, and I'm in a car accident where I'm hit head on in my lane. And so it's easy to wrap the story that, I'm a victim and, I didn't do anything wrong. That's very easy to wrap that story, but my blood pressure when I came back into this realm was 60 over 30. My heart had stopped. I was in the tunnel with the light, and the light you speak in ideas, but it is a pervasive piece that earthly words really cannot describe when you are subsumed in this light. And the light said, we would like you to go back, but it's your choice.
Mm.
Lauren, that was so powerful for me because when the light asks you to do anything, you're like, oh my God, yes, of course I'm going to say yes to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
However, it was my choice, and that was so empowering. And the truth
Wow.
is, it is our choice, all of us, every day that
Yeah.
we wake up, we chose to be here. But I needed that visceral experience to claim that for myself, that power. So that's what came out of the first near-death experience. It was years later when I was being trained to become a breath worker that the trainer said to me, wow, and she didn't know my history. She said, wow, you must have had some death energy around you to draw this experience to yourself. Now that's controversial, but it resonated in my soul. I knew that I had not been fully alive. And I knew in that moment that everything is love, even when it doesn't feel like it. And we do draw exactly to ourselves exactly what we need. So
Yeah.
that was powerful. Years later, I contracted pneumonia. It was a very common type of pneumonia, one that you should get over in 3 weeks. 10 months later, my lungs were bleeding. I'm coughing up massive quantities of blood, gasping for air. And the poetic irony of that I could not find breath, is not lost on me because after they did every autoimmune test and I didn't have any disease, though I was still very, very sick, I knew in that moment that I would eventually get well. The mind is a powerful healer. What the mind believes, the body follows suit. So I knew I would get well, but it caused me to take stock in my life. And I realized that I've helped a lot of people, but who had I really forged relationships with? Deep, loving bonds, because it's only the love that lasts. Love is the only thing worth pursuing. And I saw that I felt woefully short because I had a very guarded and protected heart.
Hmm.
So I'm sobbing. I fall to the floor and I say, please let me be love in every moment. And I believe that those very surrendered prayers, uttered when you're at the end of your will and your strength, are the ones that are always immediately heard. So what's interesting is I in short order, found out that there was an embodiment retreat in Costa Rica. I had never taken a vacation without my husband. It was like a radical change to our marriage contract. He's like, yeah, go. And I brought my friend Ian. We traipsed across the country and I learned breath work. and all the breath work has to offer. And it changed my relationship of what I saw God to be. So up until that point, God was a very patriarchal figure outside of me.
Mhm.
Once I got introduced to breath work, which really opens the conversation to your own soul, I realized that I am fully God and that this energy, this collective energy that runs through all life is God, right? It's pure energy, and I'm fully that, as are all of us. And
Right.
so it really deepened my way of showing up to life. My heart thawed, and I became fully alive.
I love that. I love that you said your heart thawed. I love that analogy. Especially when you in the beginning when you said about like breath work. And I think that people don't really understand. Well, like, let me fast forward to my thought. I'm like, that was not my thought. My thought was, in the beginning, when you said your first near-death experience about choosing, and I know it's conditioning or it's just, what I hear, but I don't think people, or a lot of people, maybe some people do now, but a lot of people, I know in the beginning, I didn't think that I chose to come here. Like, I felt like I was forced. Like, I didn't get to pick this. But
Right?
then going through my own healing, I did get to choose. And it's really interesting that you said this because I don't think people, every single person gets to choose if they want to stay versus go. And even though that through my three near death experiences, I felt like I was pushed back, I was shown that I still chose to come back. It wasn't like my ego, my pain, my suffering. That wasn't choosing. It was my soul. It was my light. I got to still come here and learn lessons. Like I seeing that, and I think that's really powerful too, especially with the world that we live in. And I think that that's like a really powerful statement because a listener, like if you're listening or a listener, and you're in a really dark place, wherever that is for you in your journey, I think that you still have the power to choose. I think that that is huge, and I think that I just needed to highlight that because I think that that is really powerful when you are you know, in a place that you feel like I just can't do this anymore or I don't want to be here. I think that that is really powerful. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and Lauren, I guess I want to say for your listeners that could be in a dark place, the word Israel means one who struggles with God. And when you're really in a relationship, there's a struggle, right? That's how you know it's a real relationship. There's struggle.
Yeah.
As a psychologist, I have wrestled with this myself. Like,
Yeah.
according to behaviorism and B.S. Skinner, if I'm having a tantrum and it's rewarded, then I'm going to have more tantrums. And I
Right.
said to God, you created B.S. Skinner, and yet when I get to the end of my strength and I'm like, I can't take this anymore, the clouds always part.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what I call a non-dual truth. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing is that love subsumes everything, and we don't live in absolutes. And I really believe that this loving energy wants to have a relationship with us, and in that way wants to get the credit because it's not our humanness that does any of it. It's our godlike nature.
Yeah.
And so we have to get to the end of our strength to have that crack in our heart to let the love in. And so there's nothing wrong with the collapse.
Yeah. And that was actually my next question. Like I literally was like, I want to talk more about this, the non-dual truth, because I think that it's like really powerful. Like when you talk about like truth, it being like both fully physical and fully energy. Can you kind of break down like this, like the listeners that maybe don't understand when you break this down to somebody that like really could feel and understand what you're even talking about with this non-dual truth.
Sure. Well, so there are many, but regarding being fully physical and fully energy, if you look at science,
Mm,
every cell is 99.999% space. Every cell in our bodies, every cell in a piece of furniture, in a rock, in a tree, every single cell. And what whirls around that space is this magnetic field that moves all of those quarks and particles. That magnetic field is the essence of love. That is the highest energetic frequency, and it runs through everything. And as a conglomeration of that energy field, that's what we call God. And so this physical realm seems so real and so solid and so alluring.
yeah,
However, it's not nearly as real as the energy realm. So
right.
what's fascinating is the first language that every baby learns is energy. They don't have words, and you can see it in children. Children are pristine energy readers. I've
Mhm.
many times had children like a 2 year old walking down the aisle in a drugstore, make a beeline away from their caregiver and come and give me a hug.
Oh,
It's
love that.
energy, right?
Yeah.
I go swimming in the ocean and large turtles come up to me. I walk in the forest and deer come right up to me because it's energy. They feel the energy, they feel safe, and they feel the connection.
Yeah.
We
Love
are all, and what's sad is as we age as children, we get over identified with language and we tune in far too much to the words. It is an act of violence when your words and your actions do not line up. That is an act of violence.
that.
It is the antithesis of love. So when you look beneath the words, and we've all had these experiences. I'm going to give you two energy experiences we can all relate to. You have great news. You want to share it with your loved ones. You go walking into the room, nobody said a word, you feel the energy, and you lead with what's wrong.
Right.
The opposite example, you're in the car going to a party. You have an argument in the car. Your energy is very low. You walk into the party, the energy is very high, and all of a sudden, you're lifted up. You feel much better
Hmm.
because energy equalizes. And that there's some important things to that.
Yeah.
When you're on this spiritual journey, your own energy amplifies up, and I can explain physiologically how that happens, but I'll put that on the shelf. But what happens is we tend to, go out into the world and the general energy may be lower. So there are what I call energy vampires. I have some dear, dear friends that are energy vampires.
Yeah.
And I have the true act of love is you have to include yourself in the equation. So love is a greater good action to lift the whole that includes you.
Yeah.
If you are not giving from a place of surplus, it's not love to be around those energy vampires. You have
Right.
to include yourself. So I think these things are worth naming. And just organically, as your energy raises, you magnetically attract higher frequency energy beings.
Yeah. And I love that you say that too, because I think a lot of us have experiences of people pleasing and, oh, it's my family, so I have to be around them or whatever. Um, and it's interesting that you say this too, because I have a lot of family members that are energy vampires, and I do love them dearly, but I have to limit my time with them, and it could just be over a text message, like immediately. Like there's some times where I love my mom so much. I do. I love her. I love her. However, before I see her name come across my phone, I'm like, not looking at that. It's just like, I just know it's going to be her complaining, her trauma dumping, her this, her that. Like, and I know that she's just venting, but it's like she never asks me, "Hey, Lauren, do you have a second to whatever?" Like I'm so self-aware that if I need to vent or I need to talk about something, I ask the person, "Do you have space?" You know? And if I don't, I'll then up like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just literally trauma dumped on you and I didn't even ask you." Like, sorry. Let me take all that back, Like I just feel like that is important because just because they're family, my husband says this all the time. Like, "Oh, it's just family." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like, no, just because they're family means nothing. They are the ones that are going to be more of those energy vampires because they know you. They're going to try to, manipulate you and all that stuff." And I think that that's really, I think people are seeing that more and more and more, or it's kind of like the flying monkey situation of, oh, I took myself out of being a flying monkey and I'm like, I'm not putting myself in another situation to be one. So like, and it's again, that's his journey, but I'm just saying, like, I think a lot of people are starting to realize, like, if you're not making me feel better, then I don't want to be around you. And I think that in itself is powerful, Doing these calls makes me feel so energized. I wouldn't do this podcast if it didn't, And I think that both the guest and me can feel that, regardless of however I'm feeling before I get on the call, And I think that that is the most powerful thing, especially because most of this is, you know, guided by spirit and channeled and just like a safe space. So I do appreciate you being here and saying that.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize the key point of what you said, Lauren, that you consciously choose. You
Yeah.
consciously choose when to attend to those people.
Yeah.
And that is the probably one of the best gifts of turning our lives over to this divine conversation is the unconscious things that we were doing that created all kinds of
Yeah.
pattern that caused distress for us become conscious. And we become conscious creators of the
Yeah.
precious moments of our lives to create something magical and wonderful and beautiful. We have that power, but it has to be conscious.
Yeah. Now, speaking about conscious, I want to kind of shift into like breath too. So when you say conscious, when we're speaking about the lens of like breathing and the breath, what is like the difference between unconscious breathing, automatic breathing, and conscious breathing? Like what or why does that shift so much for like powerful impact for healing?
Yeah, great question. So, breath is the only action in our bodies that can be done involuntarily or voluntarily, unconsciously or consciously. When we breathe unconsciously, we're breathing in that air and we're getting that nourishment to sustain our physical bodies. And this was revealed to me in breath work. When we breathe consciously, we're actually inspiring not only air, but the etheric energy that raises our frequency. When we breathe consciously, physiologically, what happens within our cells is we get higher amounts of interstitial fluid. Oxygen carries fluid. Our
Right.
bodies are largely fluid.
Right.
You hold higher amounts of fluid in your cells, and then your cells can amplify at a higher frequency. So it is a direct scientific example of how what we do in this material realm influences the energetic realm. Both. It's a bi-directional relationship. And all of the ancient cultures knew it. So Jesus breathed the Holy Spirit into them.
Right.
The Hebrew word for kiss, neshika, means to breathe together. breath is the gateway to presence. And what we know is when you, I mean, I envision conscious breath that I have like a little me standing in my throat.
Yeah.
My focus is right there in my nose and throat, and I can feel the breath coming in and coming out. Coming in, I'm getting a receipt of this higher etheric energy. Breathing out, I'm breathing out my wishes and aspirations to life. And it's a constant conversation. Um, and it changes many things in our brain. It starts with conscious breath because that's the gateway to presence. You're going to be more focused in this moment out of your head. When you're standing in your breath, this diatribe from our ego has nowhere to go. It's just presence and stillness and deliciousness, and everything amps up. And then there's the type of breath and all the physiological changes that happen from a breathwork journey, which is even deeper, we can talk about.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for explaining that because I think that some people, and I know before I knew any of this, is, you know, just saying like, oh, just breathe. Yeah, sure. It's unconscious. It happens normally. Like you just don't think about it. But it's like the time that you think about it and you're like, "Oh, I forgot to breathe," or you stop breathing and then you're like, "Why did I stop breathing?" It's like that is something to take a look at. Like if you're not breathing, or like I can just tell by people's body language if they're nervous or are you breathing? Like just take a big breath. Like, that matters. And I think that that kind of goes into, trauma in the body and how we can't, as much as our ego or our mind can tell us it's powerful, we can't think our way out of, trauma or lived experiences. So can you kind of talk a little bit about why?
Well, every experience that we have, things that we call good or bad. There
Yeah.
really is no good or bad, but
Right.
when we felt overwhelmed, that really is the definition of trauma. When the demands of the situation exceed your ability to cope.
Yeah.
Well, with that definition, we've all had trauma.
Right.
And every experience is imprinted in our bodies. And we actually have electropositron images of like a stone hitting ice, and that imprint of the stone is in every shattered piece of ice. So that's just one example of how every experience takes an imprint in our body. And so, what we are not in harmony with is dis-ease. That dis-ease becomes disease.
Yeah.
So, when you don't deal with it, when you push it into your subconscious because it was overwhelming, you've created a disintegration. You're out of the wholeness and harmony that we all remember. It's in our cellular DNA, our spiritual DNA from the Big Bang. That's what we're all looking for, is that wholeness that we were in before the Big Bang. We were unique manifestations of the one. And we remember that. We want that wholeness and that harmony. So, what's interesting is how breath work plays I think, really the most powerful role. There's three very great ways to go into the soul, but they do different things: meditation, breath work, and psychedelics. Breath work is the middle path. And so probably meditation is the easiest to integrate because you're radically in presence.
Hmm.
But if you've got a diatribe in your head, that could be the longest 5 minutes of your life,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And psychedelics are lovely. I believe these plants are enlightened beings.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to surrender and you don't have a spirit guide, to a healer to guide you,
Hmm.
it's going to take you into your soul, into your subconscious, whether you're ready or not. And some people can feel traumatized by that.
Yeah. And if this episode is bringing something up for you, especially around relationships, people pleasing, overgiving, emotional triggers, or repeating the same patterns, I want you to grab my ebook. This ebook will help you start seeing the subconscious patterns that have been running your life, your relationships, and your reactions, so that you can finally release what no longer feels aligned. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about understanding yourself, regulating your nervous system, and choosing different from a place of self-trust. If you're ready to stop repeating the same cycles and come back home to yourself, grab my ebook. The link is below in the show notes. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that you I've been doing somatic soul renewal with one of my mentors, and I got to the point that I love breath work. I do it. I do meditation. It's never really been hard for me, but it's been hard for me in the beginning when she's like, "Okay, so we're going to put the story on the shelf and you're going to disconnect the emotion and we're doing this." And she goes, "Where do you feel in your body?" And it's like, no, I'm like that person that like would ride through town, a scary town with my windows up and like I'm speeding. That's literally how it was when she's like, you have, now this was like a couple years ago, but like I remember that and I'm like, oh no, I'm not feeling any of this. I suppressed so much of it that it started to like I couldn't suppress it anymore, that like I needed to address it. So it's always interesting to me when people come to me and I ask them different questions and they're like, I don't have any trauma. And I'm like, what? Yes, you do. That one heartbreak, that one, but maybe you don't have this elaborate, trauma, like sexual, trauma or anything like that. But like you have trauma, like you were heartbroken, you've had probably a partner, you have trauma. So it just reminds me of, especially when people say that, because it's like you just don't want to look at it. And it reminds me of myself. So it's like, oh, I see what they're doing. Because I used to do that. Oh no, I'm fine. I can't feel that, and it was like until my body was like, I felt like I was just a fire, flame just walking around, because I'm like, I don't want to feel this, but then it was like, okay, I have to feel this because there was things in my life that I wanted, that it was always some block of like, you can't have that, and I think that that is really powerful, and I do believe that breathing through it or just remembering, oh, I was the person, my body would be like tense, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should just breathe, right? And then it was like one simple, oh, okay, we're okay. Right?
Well, and I love that you talked about a little bit of the somatic work that you did, because what's happening when we're walking heads is those your body is yelling up signals, please hear me, and we are so shut off we can't hear
Oh,
any of those signals.
yeah.
And that's our ego's attempt to
Yeah.
protect us, but our egos are really a conglomeration of our wounded children, and their coping mechanisms are very immature.
Yeah.
And so life ends up happening in our heads and feeling like we're eating ice cream, but it tastes like frozen peas. We're so cut
Right.
off, we can't feel anything, good or bad.
Yeah.
And so it comes at quite a large cost. And when we learn to tune in and follow these sensations and signals and what they want to do, and here's how the integration happens. You have to go in not once, not twice, but many times, because you're
Yeah.
rewriting a new code in your software, which is your nervous system. And you have to complete the action that did not get completed at the time.
Right.
It's amazing to me, in the natural world, trees just naturally discard their leaves, they fall to the ground, they decompose, and they become the vitamins for the tree for new growth. But with humans, it's it's not a natural process.
Right.
We have to choose to discard it. And the thing is, it's not like it ever goes away, but you change the energy around it. You complete what needed to be completed. And what I universally see in myself and with the clients I work with is that the coin that we wrapped around the story gets flipped. Words are the most powerful energy for us to create. Our
Right.
thoughts are powerful, words are even more powerful. So if my original story was, say for my car accident, I was a victim, I was hit head on in my lane.
Yeah.
That is a very different story than the flipped story. I know that my consciousness lives on forever. That
Right.
Einstein was right. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. My energy goes on forever and it just magnetizes back to the whole. And that's where I'm complete. How lucky am I that I have this visceral experience of that becomes unrefutable? So the coin gets flipped.
Right.
And the power of breath work in particular, and all somatic experiencing uses breath work, but if you're doing a pure breath work journey, they're
Hmm.
very psychedelic. So you see visuals, you hear auditory downloads, you have somatic sensations that are just undeniable, unrefutable. But what happens is in breath work, the trips are usually ascent trips. You're back to the oneness, floating the cosmos. They're lovely. Love really woos us in. And then it's not going to give us a descent trip until our egos signal that we're ready for that shedding. So it's very gentle. And what happens is you've mastered surrender. You know what it feels like for your energy to leave your body. When the descent trip comes, you're hovering over your body, looking down at that traumatic experience. But so you're feeling it, you're fully feeling it, but you're looking at it through the eyes of love. And what routinely happens is you see that even in those darkest moments of your life, you were never alone.
Right.
That's powerful. You were never alone. And it played a significant role in creating who you are today. These are very powerful, visceral knowings. I call them they're no way. Like if you
Right.
haven't had the experience, it doesn't matter what you say. Nothing would change my mind around it. And there's a freedom and a liberation. So it changes the way the energy is encoded in my body to integrate it.
Yeah. And I love that you say that too. I wish I would have found these plants before I had to go through my near-death experiences. But because the way that you just explained that is how I was like looking at my body and I could see it from love. I'm like, oh, okay. It was like my way of like stop acting like a victim. You're not a victim. It's not like poor you. You need learn the lesson so we can move on here, pretty much. And it's like, stop, being so selfish and just learn what you need to learn. You don't need to keep repeating things. My whole thing was like, it was like 3 cycles. I would always have to repeat things 3 times. Now it's like, I'm not doing that anymore. But it's like, that's just kind of like how I learned. But yeah, I definitely had to, know and understand that, what the relationship looked like from the eyes of like, oh, the observer. And I still remind myself of, even if I am triggered, it's like, oh, okay, can I look at this from a different perspective so I can take myself out of it to see what lesson am I supposed to learn? What is like the opportunity here? So I do, I mean, obviously now, yes, I've worked with psychedelics and stuff. So like it reminds me of like it's so the that tool is so much easier than actually after going through this traumatic experience to learn what I needed to learn. But that's just what I chose.
Yeah,
You
can
know,
I speak a bit about why the tool makes it easier?
sure, I would love that.
Yeah, so in meditation, breathwork, and psychedelics
Hmm.
all do the same physiological thing in our brains. They shut down the default mode network. Now, we have found this on functional MRIs. It is a network in the brain that maps directly onto Freud's construct of the ego. That's amazing that he had this theoretical construct, but it is a network in our brains. And our brains, like a lot of parts of our body, want to take the easy way. So we look for the shortcuts, the heuristics. Very self-referencing. Everything's about me. I got to take it personally. All
Yeah.
that gets
Yeah. Yeah.
shut down. And that's our in our forebrain, and it drops us into our midbrain. Our midbrain has the pineal gland, which is widely regarded as the seat of the soul. Now, what's fascinating is what makes the plants magic is a chemical called DMT. DMT lays dormant in our pineal glands. So when we do breath work, it actually squeezes the cerebral spinal fluid in our spinal column and sends it up to the ventricles. In Hindu, they call that Kundalini, the shooting up of that Kundalini energy. When those crystals get to the ventricles that surround the pineal gland, they massage the pineal gland and out comes that DMT. So it's dormant in our bodies. Like we don't need the enlightened plants will lay down our lives to have an enlightened experience.
Right.
But I find that the integration is most difficult with psychedelics because people love the trips. And I live in Baltimore, the land of psychedelic research. So I have a lot of friends that just want to chase those trips.
Yeah.
I had one trip, well, I've had many, but one trip that really was powerful. I asked for a nervous system reset. I did somatic experiencing therapy for a year just to fully integrate on a nervous system level what happened.
Yeah.
So the integration piece is harder with psychedelics, but
Right.
you're releasing that DMT with breath work, and it's easier with breath work. You're still hovering over the experience. That's very similar, but you've released that DMT and you get that cellular upgrade to amplify at a higher frequency.
Yeah.
That's why breath work is the integration piece is easier.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining all that because that definitely it makes a lot of sense. Some people are going to be like, "What? I love this type of stuff." So some people are like, "What is she talking about?" So yeah, like I feel like you get to choose which one. But yeah, I definitely understand when I had my one experience. I've had actually I guess I've only had two experiences with it. The rest of it was just with breath work. That I can definitely resonate with. It felt harder that like I felt like my body was like my nervous system had to keep catching up. Like I thought we already did this. Okay. And like and continuing to repeat it, which is why I'm like, okay, I think I need to just do the breath work side of it. And it was so much easier. So I definitely can. Which is probably why a lot of people think that they have to keep continuing to chase those trips because it's like your body isn't your nervous system hasn't caught up yet, because it is very powerful.
Yeah, and I believe this is my experience that you have to rewrite those codes
Yeah.
fully conscious. It's not that you're not fully conscious with psychedelics, you are,
Hmm.
but it's aiding in the shutting down of that default mode network. You have to have your full brain accessing, and you've got to fully consciously choose it within your whole brain. Maybe that's it. But I will say
Yeah.
that Dan Siegel is a noted neurobiologist who says meditation, breath work, psychedelics, they all bring us here. And whatever you need to do, let's meet here. And I think that's spot on. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I was just going to ask you before we wrap up, for somebody that is maybe new to breath work or like deep healing, what do they need to know about creating safety in their body before going deeper?
Yeah, I mean, it's safety in our body and trusting that your soul has the answer for every single thing that you need. It's a trust in your higher self. And it's the willingness to surrender. Ultimately, it's the willingness to surrender, which seems very vulnerable. When I first started breath work and I would have a guide and I felt so vulnerable, like, man, my guide could ask me to do anything and I would probably do it.
Hmm.
That's scary, right? And you have to not only trust in yourself, but in the integrity of your guide as a healer, especially if you have a trauma background. So it's getting comfortable with the art of surrender. And it's like anything else, it's like building any relationship. It's little by little. You go in a little bit and then a little further the next time and you don't give up. But surrender is key to having these experiences and letting your soul speak. Because what's surrendering actually is your ego. That's what's surrendering. And if your ego's been driving the bus for so long, these children are very frightened. And so, another great way to dip the toe in the water if you're really having trouble with surrender is internal family systems therapy. I don't know if you're familiar with the Disney movie Inside Out.
Hmm.
It was totally made to elucidate what internal family systems therapy is all about. And it's a great easy way to understand these children that we have living in us. Well, the Hopi wisdom is right. You are the one you are looking for. Nothing out here is ever going to fill you or complete you or make you happy. It's all in here. And as you harmonize in here, you magnetically attract harmony out here because energy is really the guiding force here. So, uh, I have no stake in this book, but Jay Early wrote a book called Self Therapy, and it's a beautiful book that does the techniques of internal family systems with a trusted partner. So you don't need to spend money and go to a therapist. You
Right.
could, if you have a trusted partner, you could do it on each other, and they're beautiful, beautiful explorations. These wounded children are like scared animals in the forest. First, you've got to get them to come out, and then you have to get to know them and befriend them. But when you love them, that love is the only true healer. And that's when everything changes.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that I know we didn't get to touch on this a lot, but especially like relationships as mirrors. And I think that that is, when we're out of alignment with love, we see that through patterns in our relationships with ourselves, specifically actual physical partners, and if people have businesses. And I know that people are always like, you're always saying relationship with yourself, because I'm like, that is what everything else depends on. I mean, it took me a very long time to understand that, but I think that that is really important. So thank you so much for this powerful reminder of healing that is not about fixing ourselves. It's about remembering, who we are between the layers and creating that safety in our body, that feeling of truth. So thank you so much for that. Colleen, where can people find you? And tell us about your upcoming book.
I would love to. Yeah, so I do have a website, essencemerging.com. It has links to my books on there. I also have a YouTube website that really has a few videos on how to do breath work. So I'll send you, Lauren, a link to just the
Okay.
short 5-minute how-to for people that are intrigued and want to try it. Um, I on my website I also offer 9 hacks for simple practices for awakening. That's free. You can sign in and get that. And my book comes out April 30th. It's called Essence Merging, and it really is a primer of what you can expect when you turn your life over to the leadings of your own soul of love. So it really starts from my second near-death experience, but it's also interwoven in a love story with my breathwork partner who turned out to be my twin flame. I'm very happily married, but there's this
Hmm.
twin flame love story interwoven in this primer. And I think there's just lots of learnings in that one relationship cannot possibly fill every need and desire and be the perfect practice partner to find every hook that is out of alignment with love. Now, this is a completely honorable relationship. I'm honorable in my marriage. He's honorable in his. However, the love is incredibly deep. And so when you
Hmm.
can experience, I would say that he knows me in a deeper way than anyone ever has or ever will because it's a soul to soul knowing. And so there's lots of tantra that is interwoven in this story. Tantra really gets a rap in sex, but it's
Yeah.
really about devotion. And
Yeah.
the first level of Tantra is gaze. The second one is touch. We touch hands a lot, and there's a lot of energy exchange. But when you're gazing into someone's eyes and there is a soul to soul connection, there is no you, there is no me. That
Right.
is that union that we're all looking for. So it's a very powerful healer. And what happens from that is, as you amplify higher, you learn that you can essence merge in any moment with anything. Emptying the dishwasher, walking in the woods,
Yeah.
any moment you can lose yourself. And we've all had those experiences where we've lost ourselves at the birth of a baby, or playing an instrument, or playing sports. And you realize it's a heightened, amped up experience. That's available in every moment. So that's all interwoven through the book. And yeah, I'm excited to use it to inspire people because I believe we are in this collective awakening, and it's an exciting time to be alive.
Yeah. I love that so much. I'm excited for it to come out because I'm like, oh, when you said twin flame and, all of that, I'm actually married to my twin flame, but I can see where before we physically met each other a couple years ago, like I always knew it was him. He didn't know much. I ran in the beginning, but I was always searching for him in every relationship. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I should just reach out to him, you know?
Beautiful.
Because it was like I thought, oh, I did, there was just part of his story or past or journey that I was like, oh, I can't accept that, and it was more of like, oh, I didn't accept my part of myself first. And then that happened, So I'm excited. I'm excited to learn more about that because I do believe that we can merge in every parts of our soul maybe that we left behind or whatever our story is around that in the moments. I think that's what matters. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for the listeners. We couldn't do it without you guys. And make sure, just a gentle reminder, that you go check out her links. Make sure you follow her. Make sure you go check out her book. By the time this podcast drops, her book will be available. So make sure you check out if you're watching this over on YouTube, make sure you check the description box. And if you're listening to this, it'll be below in the show notes. And if you are somebody that knows why you're here and you need more depth, you need more truth, and maybe just need more help to show up in your life authentically and your business, I want to invite you into the Enlightened Misfits Sisterhood. Those links also will be below in the description box or show notes. And this is where we take these conversations and actually integrate them. As always, like I said, don't forget to subscribe. It brings amazing guests on like Colleen to give you guys very valuable content. And if you feel that somebody, please share this episode with somebody that you feel that would gain knowledge from listening. I love you all. I'll see you guys next week and in the next episode.
If today's episode spoke to you and you're ready to rise with support, I'd love to invite you in to the Enlightened Misfits Sisterhood, a sacred community for spiritual entrepreneurs to heal, grow, and lead with purpose. You can join us by using the link below in the show notes or connecting with me over on Facebook or Instagram at The Mermaid Light. If you loved today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave a review. This helps support us reach more women who are ready to rise. Remember, your journey isn't about fitting in. It's about embracing the truth of who you are. Until next time, stay inspired, stay aligned, and keep creating your extraordinary path. This is Lauren, and you've been listening to the Enlightened Misfits podcast.